Just a few days ago, Monday, September the 18th, I was flying back to Manchester Airport from Keflavik Airport with a phone full of pictures and a belly full of lamb. This is because, thanks to my viewers in general and a few specific individuals who made huge contributions to my throne wish list, I was able to go on vacation to Iceland for a few days, in celebration partly of my girlfriend's birthday and partly of our 1-year anniversary. So, because I couldn't have done it without you guys, I figured it's only fair if I share what I can of this amazing holiday. We arrived at Keflavik Airport in the afternoon of Wednesday the 18th, having been given a brief preview of Iceland's beautiful desolation as our plane descended. From there, it was a 45-minute bus ride into Reykjavik, during which we were treated to the jarring contrast of rugged terrain and mountains being eclipsed by Domino's pizza chains as we passed them. Reykjavik is a beautiful city. Looking down a street that descends to a harbour, across the water of which you can see massive looming mountains, is an experience that will make you freeze on the spot for a moment. Hallgrímskirkja is a remarkable landmark, not only for its striking appearance, but for its function as an indicator of roughly where you must be when you can see it in the skyline, which is most of the time. Up close, the structure comes across as plasticky. It has hollow children's play equipment vibes, but it's meant to be looked at a distance, I suppose. It is incredibly clean in Reykjavik, not just for a capital city, but for anywhere people live in this day and age. Even the graffiti is exceptionally clean and crisp, save for some hastily scrawled anti-tourist messages such as, "Deport tourists, not migrants." A strange message, considering tourists leave anyway, by definition, and I doubt the author wants us to become migrants instead. But I understand general anti-tourist sentiment at least, especially considering many times more people visit Iceland each year than live there. I think I ran into less than a handful of actual Icelanders during my entire stay. Some of our fellow tourists were also, to say the least, extremely disgusting and irritating. But I'll get back to that later. We stayed in a wonderful apartment which used to be Grettisgat Studio, now known as the Old Stable, where artists like Björk and Blur have recorded in the past. Despite the weather being cold and rainy most days, we stayed toasty whenever we returned to home base thanks to not having to worry about heating. Heat, energy, and water in Iceland are all practically free, thanks to how they've managed to exploit their rivers and access to geothermal energy. I didn't realize the full extent of this, and was surprised to learn that almost all hot water is pumped into the city from geothermal plants, as opposed to being heated locally. Traveling outside the city, you'll often see the big black pipes that carry the hot water. Also, yes, as you may have heard, the hot water does stink of sulfur, which means taking eggy showers. Luckily, the smell doesn't linger on the skin. Our first day was a half day with little planned. We just went to the nearby grocery store called Bonus, which has a piggy bank mascot intended to represent saving money, but which I prefer to interpret as fat asses welcome. We simply got some snacks and sandwich stuff to bring with us on trips. It was then that I discovered my love of licorice, and salty licorice in particular. God damn, is it addictive. I'm sucking on a licorice pastel right now. The opal licorice pastels. They're real good, especially the salt licorice one. And god damn, do they have a lot of varieties of licorice in Iceland, which I'm told are different to continental licorices as they use a great deal more of the root. If you're unsure about licorice, I highly recommend Pretty Boy Choco. It's a strip of licorice and a strip of coconut milk candy coated in chocolate. It should ease you into the more hardcore licorice fiend options. The Reipazan cheese, on the other hand, I decided to pass on. In the evening, we ate out at the Icelandic pub. It is there, on my first night in the country, that I achieved my first culinary goal. I got to try hákarl, fermented shark. Fermented because, if not, it is poisonous. However, having gone through the right processes, it only tastes poisonous.
It smells fishy even without opening.
Which is reassuring because I've heard it smells of much worse things than fish. It smells like hair dye. We watched a video, a little mini documentary. The lady said it smells like hair dye. It does. And now you're going to smell it. Does it not remind you of hair dye stuff?
It smells like ammonia.
Grab. Oh, it's spongy. It's spongy, and I'm afraid.
Oh my
I just
God.
dropped it.
Jesus.
It's fine. I'll do a double piece. I was trying to cut a piece. I'll do a double piece.
Okay, so is everyone ready to question the jar?
It tastes good at first. Like almost like if you've ever had a really, really aged steak. It's got funk to it, but it's really nice. And then it hits a flavor that feels like a human being should not consume it. And then that flavor keeps coming, and it keeps coming. And then you swallow, and it intensifies instead of going away.
After that, my main was even more of a treat. I had fin whale steak, served with mashed potato, salad, and onion rings. It's a generous serving, but fin whales are rather large, so I suppose that's to be expected.
Thanks to the kind people who contributed to my throne wish list, I'm having whale, like a whale steak, fin whale, served rare. You can see it's very red. It's seared on the outside, it's very red. Comes with a couple onion rings, a little salad, and I believe a béarnaise sauce. So I'm going to cut off a piece of that and try it. This is just interesting, and I think it'll probably be good. And it cuts like a rare steak. It does not cut like fish at all. Which I mean, whales are mammals, so you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? It cuts like a mammal, which a whale is. That's delicious.
Good.
That's delicious. It's just like a very, very unique steak. I don't even know how to describe the flavor quite. Crispy.
For dessert, we got ice cream at Valdis, something we do several times on our trip. We tried many flavors, including salty licorice, rye bread, and rhubarb skyr. But unfortunately, we didn't take any pics. The whole place is painted Harmful Opinions pink and blue, so I really should have. There are so many ice cream places around the city that are so popular despite the cold weather. Maybe they should call this place Ice Cream Land. Well, what I'm about to say doesn't detract from all the good things about the trip, or from the trip as a whole, I suppose. As we wandered around the city, it did become extremely apparent just how touristy Reykjavik is. It's crazy, to the point where I have no idea what locals actually do or eat there, except for the slight info I gleaned emptying our garbage into our host's larger bins and seeing that they'd been filled with pizza boxes, Pepsi cans, and bags for frozen nuggets. Perhaps even the people who live there, and presumably have appropriate wages, find the astronomical prices to be a squeeze. Even what would be considered cheap junk at home is relatively expensive there thanks to reliance on import. There are still one or two hyper-bizarre, quirky art stores in Reykjavik selling things like a figurine of Bart Simpson with a giant penis head, or Only Clan's action figures. Overwhelmingly, however, there's a sense of strategic homogenization in the city. I was unsettled to see so many American or British places literally called things like the American Bar, which didn't seem to be for locals, but for American and British tourists. Many Many stores sell exactly the same things, stinking of a sterile optimization beyond simply trying to appeal to visitors. You'll also find some jarringly out-of-place establishments, like a hippie Hindu merchandise store in prime position at a fork in the road. We walked in and had to wonder, why? And who's buying this stuff? The only other person in there was a worker or owner, despite the streets being busy. I also sort of hate the Rainbow Street. It is intensely hideous, not just in its garishness, but due to the relative cleanliness of the city, the way the filth shows up on the bright colors as opposed to on the black roads or grey tiles makes it look uniquely grody.
I came to Iceland to go to the Rainbow Road. No one here is even gay. None of them will fuck me. It's messed up. False advertising. I want a refund for this vacation.
Luckily though, Reykjavik was just our home base and the real adventure. And what I really love about Iceland began the next day. Or at least I got a taste of what I love about Iceland the next day. Early Thursday morning, we hopped onto a van at bus stop 8 next to Hallgrímskirkja and started our first tour. Our guide was excellent, a man named Bartosz, originally from Poland but now an Icelandic citizen. He was very open about how many things are tourist nonsense, warning us to be careful about where we got any wool goods from, as often they will be Chinese-made trash, and that due to Iceland's brutal survivalist history until very recently, it has little traditional cuisine beyond straight-up fish and meat, essentially warning us that if it isn't meat soup, plakari, fermented shark, or rye bread or skyr, we're being bullshitted about it being traditional Icelandic food in any meaningful way. Our first stop was, and apologies for all my pronunciations throughout this video, Thingvellir National Park, which sits in a rift between North American and Eurasian tectonic plates, where we got to walk through a fissure. To call the views stunning is an understatement, the only mar being the viewing platform itself, toilets, and safety ropes which, while appreciated on a pragmatic level, are as visually unwelcome to me as litter. It was here that the first seeds of my true appreciation of Iceland were planted. I could never survive anywhere further in than the very edges, but neither can any other modern-day garbage. There's fast food in Iceland. There's tourist trap stuff like a guaranteed Northern Lights show, where you go into a facility to look at a screen. But all that shit disappears real fast when even taking a shallow excursion away from the country's edges, even without going far enough to need a super jeep where it starts to get dangerous for real. The angry earth is telling mankind to fuck off, and I respect it. I deeply appreciate that a place like this exists. Why? I can't explain rationally or logically, it's just a feeling. In stark contrast with this epiphany, our next stop was a farm that houses some of the relatively few cows in Iceland. We went into their ice cream shop from where you can see the cows eat while you eat. Their whole gimmick is, we've got happy animals, so the food's good. You know, that seems to be a thing across all of Iceland, or at least, you know, the accessible parts of Iceland. I got banana ice cream, while my girlfriend went with Dime Bar flavored ice cream. Very traditional Icelandic flavors, of course. I also got to make friends with an Icelandic shepherd dog, with a mid-length coat that felt so nice I couldn't stop stroking it. It was like a fur rug. This mini experience illustrates the middle ground, I think. Something real that also has a tourist-oriented section, a tourist face, as opposed to being a total contrivance. There was also some incredible taxidermy on display. After that sweet treat, it was time to be blasted with nature's brutality once again. Gullfoss, the Golden Falls. Very pretty, especially with the rainbows that form around it, but more than anything else, it struck me with its sense of power. Despite being so tourist-friendly and popular and easy to get to, it still carries that sense of hostile indifference to humans, a refreshing contrast to a life spent in places designed for comfort and convenience. A challenge. One I won't rise to, but one I can feel in my heart. Once more in contrast with this glimpse of a cold, uncaring environment, we then went and saw some little tiny cute horses. One of them bit the hell out of my belly through my coat. In Iceland, all the horses are descended from the first few that were imported, and none are allowed in anymore. If a horse leaves, it also can't come back due to the risk of introducing diseases that are not present in Iceland. They sorta look like chunky Super Saiyan emo ponies. Good-tempered, but aloof. They know they're special. Next, we entered the stink zone to see Geysir. Geysir, the geyser. In fact, the reason geysers are called geysers is this geyser named Geysir. Sadly though, he doesn't blow anymore, so instead we had to watch Strokur. Yes, the stroker that will blow all over you.
Of course, right?
Don't worry, that's a baby one. And for a sense of scale, here's a pic taken at some distance. Mostly, these little stink holes were just nice to look at. Some super clear, some glowing, some bubbling like this Little geyser. Nearby was a gas station, tourist trash gift shop that probably had, fake wool products, and some insanely overpriced restaurants. My girlfriend and I ate some ham and cheese in pretzel buns that we put together in the morning. I was tempted to buy a carton of the demented furry milk, but ultimately decided against it. This site, I would say, is the one most harmed in terms of the impression it gives by human development. I understand not wanting people to burn the hell out of themselves, but the sheer amount of ropes and handrails and signs, and that you can see the gift shop from the geysers, really makes it feel fake, even though it isn't. Our final stop on this first tour was Kerid Crater Lake. My girlfriend walked all the way around it, but my balance is horrific, so I turned back rather than taking an involuntary swim. One of our fellow tourists took a large drink from the little lake, suggesting it was fine because his guide had told him that if a river was clear it was good to drink from, and if it's silty it should be avoided. While the water was crystal clear, it should be noted that standing water full of God knows what kind of algal bloom is different to drinking from a river. I pray for him. I also yoinked a few rocks from here because they came in all sorts of wild shapes, sizes, and textures. On the way back, my girlfriend took some photos in a public toilet. Just of the info sign, don't worry. Apparently there's an issue with Asian visitors destroying toilet seats. There's also an issue with Chinese tourists in particular leaving trash everywhere, sticking it in nooks and crannies, filling bags with trash, and putting it in the back seat of buses. I don't even understand why. It's so easy to just hold on to it for a few minutes and throw it away. Anyway, we stopped at a mall so people could pee, and I did some intercontinental yoga. Maybe. It's probably a bullshit line. And then we were back in Reykjavik, and hungry again. I wanted to try plokkfiskur, the traditional fish stew. So we went to one of a few Reykjavik fish restaurant locations. Mistake. Big mistake. Service is bizarre. You order at the bar, which is fine. A lot of places here are like that too. Weirdly though, the table has napkins in a holder but no cutlery. We thought they'd bring knives and forks with the food. No. Cutlery was by the entrance, which we didn't notice and couldn't see from inside the restaurant. We also weren't given our drinks when we ordered, and they weren't brought with our food. I went up to the counter and said to the guy, "Hey, we ordered 2 Coke Zeros." He recoiled like I was going to attack him, said okay, and quickly handed them to me. Then, the food itself. The flavor was okay, though dominated by a sharp cheese. The serving size was minuscule, as the already small mini cast iron it's served in isn't as deep as it seems. And it was barely on the edge of me asking for a refund and leaving in terms of temperature. Barely borderline acceptable. And also patchy in terms of hot and cold, which to me suggests the use of a microwave. My first impression of plakkari was not a positive one. The rye bread it was served with too was strangely moist. We knew to expect it to be sweet. I didn't know about it being like wet. To wash away that experience, we then went to the Jungle Bar, where I had a Brennivine-based cocktail. Brennivine being Iceland's national liquor, their version of aquavit, flavored exclusively with caraway. If you want to drink in Reykjavik, I highly recommend the Jungle Bar. Great atmosphere, great service, great cocktails. On the way back to our Airbnb, I saw this thing. I saw a skooma den. I saw Baldur's actual gate, an Eggert sign, and the Aurora Borealis. Yep, we were walking home and my girlfriend pointed to the sky saying, "What the hell is that?" Bang, there it was. Pure luck that the sky was clear enough to see it. We didn't even have to go on a special tour or see the fake one in that tourist cube. I gotta tell you, it looked pretty scuffed to the naked eye, probably because of all the light pollution in the city. But through a camera, you could see the colors perfectly. The perfect end to our first full day in Iceland, I'd say. We paid for our good fortune the next day, though. We'd been immensely lucky to have sun and clear skies, but now nature was healing, and the rain returned with a vengeance. Though not straight away. The first stop on Friday's tour of the Snæfellsnes Peninsula, Itri-Tunga Beach, was rain-free, but also unfortunately seal-free, which is fine because like most places in Iceland, it was incredibly beautiful, despite bringing to mind Lovecraft's Dagon and thoughts of what it would be like to be trapped on an endless field of mucky seaweed. Plus, when you turn around, the views are just as surreal and awe-inspiring. There was a mini stop at a picturesque waterfall. Don't remember what it's called, but definitely postcard material. Having witnessed Gullfoss the previous day, it wouldn't surprise me if its name was Litli Fosslet. And then the rain started, just as we reached the Black Church. It isn't satanic or anything, it's black because pitch was used to protect the wood and prevent it from deteriorating as quickly. I guess precisely because of conditions like these. I should mention at this point that our guide that day was, to say the least, not quite in the same league as our first. He would leave his mic on so everyone in the van could hear him breathe and cough, lose track of the stories he was telling, and never finish them. Give bizarrely worded, hard-to-understand instructions, and just generally, frankly, sucked. At the start, he warned us that he hadn't done this tour in many years. It felt like he was filling in and winging it. The mic, as well, had clearly had its gain cranked so he could mumble, which means it was both incredibly loud and peaky and nearly incomprehensibly muffled, the best of both worlds. Because of all this, I can't tell you much about the next place, which I believe is called Rudfelldar Canyon. There was some sort of story about the half-giant Barthur Snæfellsnes. Maybe he fell and made the canyon. I don't know. It was absolutely belting down with rain as we approached this giant's crack. When we reached it, it turned out you could climb inside by jumping from rock to rock in a mini river. I messed up and soaked my legs, but I made it. At a cost. For the rest of the tour, I would be freezing as I had been soaked by rain and this hike all the way to my underwear. My girlfriend was in a similar position. Worse than that, our next stop was the most blatant tourist trap of them all. We were brought to a place with a restaurant and a cafe, with giant customer-only signs for the restrooms and no public restroom option in sight. We would be here for over an hour, having been driving around for hours. While the Barthur statue was cool and the Black Cliffs were a unique sight, this section of the tour was a major low point. The guide had made it unclear where people would be picked up, giving instruction, waiting for people to leave, and then giving contradictory instructions to the rest of us. It was bizarre. We were freezing. We left very late because people didn't show up at pickup. Unsurprisingly, after that was the Black Pebble Beach. The pics look a lot better than I remember, Probably because I felt so bad at that point, I was just focusing on not feeling cold and tensing up. It's a very grim environment, especially when you noticed the bits and pieces of shipwreckage. It's a shame we had so little time and I was struggling with being so wet still. And finally for that day, we reached Kirkjufell. Apparently this has been in a bunch of shows, including Game of Thrones. Never watched it or seen it before, but it is cool. If only for why it looks that way. Supposedly one side was shorn by one glacier and the other by another before they melted away. I have to say, there was a much larger mountain nearby that looked way cooler to me though, along with the gates to hell that supposedly play an ominous tone as wind blows through them, although I didn't get to hear it. We got back so late that night that we had to wing it and go with whatever was open for dinner. We went to Reykjavik Chips and got fish and chips. Gotta say, exceptional. Sadly, I forgot to take pics, so these are photos from Google, but they're representative. You get a basket with 3 perfectly cooked pieces of fish in a thin but incredibly crisp batter and a decent helping of fries, alongside a sauce of your choosing. We looked at other people there getting massive sharing baskets of chips. If you're looking for something normal that's relatively cheap for Reykjavik, don't hesitate to visit Chips. Having gone through the ringer on Friday, Saturday's plan was perfect. First of all, of course, we slept in. Then, we went to 101 Reykjavik Street Food on Rainbow Road. We got plokkfiskur again, and traditional meat soup to share. The fish stew, absolutely redeemed. This was incredibly delicious and more like you'd expect. A big portion of something between fish pie and fish stew with the characteristically sweet Icelandic rye bread to eat alongside it. Plenty of big chunks of white fish, not dominated by sharp cheese, hot and evenly heated. Perfect on a cold, wet day. The meat soup was delicious too, if not remarkable. Lamb and root vegetables in broth, it's what you'd expect. Nice for sure though, make no mistake. Service was great, and we were surprised to find that they give everyone a chocolate wafer bar after you pay. Ooh, speaking of little desserts again, there's something I forgot to mention. Every time we walked around Reykjavik, I'd see these cakes. In stores, on the sides of delivery vans, everywhere. So we got a 4-pack. I needed to know what was inside under that little icing lid. Lemon curd maybe, a syrupy center perhaps. Nope, it's an almond cupcake with a gimmick shape. It's not a container. It is just cake with a thin layer of icing inside of the volcanic crater on top. Anyway, the cherry on top of our relaxation day was a trip to Sky Lagoon. I'm sorry to say we didn't film or take pics inside, but here's me at the entrance getting blasted by the storm. The rest of the pics are just stock ones, but it does look exactly like this. You get a little armband that locks and unlocks your locker, and on top of that, you get a black band to gain access to the ritual. Whoo, boy. Definitely do the ritual. You start by chilling in the 40-degree main lagoon for a while. Then you get in a cold plunge for 30 seconds and literally chill. After that, it's into the sauna to sweat while you look out over the water. Then, cold again in the frozen mist room. Next, you scrub yourself down with their mix of salt and oils and then let it all into your skin in the 100-degree steam room. Lastly, you wash yourself off and get back into the lagoon for as long as you want. Your skin becomes butter. Your muscles, jelly. It's real. It's not woo-woo. It really does take away all your stress. Doesn't hurt that there's a bar too. I tried Ulfrun, an IPA. Pretty standard, just, yep, that's an IPA territory. Very light and mild, whereas I prefer the weirder or at least more intense takes. For proof of relaxation, here's me afterwards, having just shared an Icelandic donut and a cinnamon roll with my girlfriend. For dinner, because we were back late again, we went to the Viking hot dog van outside Hallgrímskirkja. Very gimmicky branding, but solid dogs, if you can call them that. On the left is the traditional. I'm not sure what the sauce was on top, it was pale pinky brown. with a streak of béarnaise and crispy onions underneath. In the middle is the pulled pork bun with a streak of barbecue and twin lashings of mayo and sriracha. Underneath the meat was red cabbage and potato chips. On the right is the pulled lamb bun with béarnaise sauce and red cabbage underneath. Maybe onion too, if I remember correctly. We slept well after that, and woke up on our final full day in Iceland, which was also our anniversary. We left it as a free day to do whatever we wanted, apart from the reservation I made for a special dinner. We had to go see the Sun Voyager by the docks. It's very nice in person. It looks like a boat full of solaires praising the sun. We were worried at first because just as we reached it, a bus full of other tourists showed up and we thought it would be swarmed, but they were gone pretty quick. As an autist, I enjoyed seeing a train. Also, as an autist, I had to make my pilgrimage to the EVE Online Memorial.
We're here. We made it to the EVE Memorial that I'm not on because when I played this I was a kid and I didn't have a credit card or anything, so I couldn't get a sub, and I think you needed to be subbed to be on it. So I'm not on it, but I played a bit of EVE. I did the free trial over and over again as a kid, and then later I played it and I was like, damn, I don't have time for this. But EVE's really cool. Here's the monument. Everyone's here. Everyone's here. We've got Big Boy Chungus. We've got Big Chief Slapper Ho. We got Big Booty Judy.
Finally. Oh my god, there's an awful lot of blacks on there.
As a nice bonus, we also got to see a giant grass nipple, which was nearby. I don't really get it. The little shed at the top is full of dangling fish heads. It's called Thufa. It's neat, and the walk up it is significantly more perilous than it looks, especially if you're dealing with people going the other way. As a breakfast treat, we picked up a cinnamon roll, a blueberry licorice roll, and a vanilla nougat thingy from Bluth & Co., which a lady in line told us was the best. They were all delicious. The vanilla nougat thing was almost Nutella-y, although that was primarily down to the consistency and appearance. It didn't taste that chocolatey or hazelnutty. It was good though. The cinnamon roll was squishy and decadent despite not being smothered in sugar goo. The blueberry licorice was the star. Blueberry beyond blueberry, with a bitter dusting of black licorice. It makes me sad that I'll probably never have one again. After blobbing out for a while, we went for a late lunch at Icelandic street food. They do the soup in bread gimmick. I went for trad lamb, and the GF went for shellfish. Hers had a delicious langoustine broth, but was definitely a bit too salty. At first, I was underwhelmed by mine. It seemed to have no broth, until I realized you need to scrape at the bread, which instantly sucked it up if you want the full flavor. Delicious. Pricey for what it is, but so is everything there. And you've got to bear in mind you get free refills and unlimited waffles that the waitress keeps restacking. Now, I don't condone this, but the couple next to us bought one soup, the girl ate it, then the guy refilled and ate it. So, some shoestring strats if you're out there and need it. We needed to walk off that lunch, so it was time to take another look around all the stores. Something my girlfriend had been hunting the whole holiday was a real hand-knitted sweater. Two things. One, they're expensive as hell. Two, you've gotta be careful not to get scammed with a fake. But I could see how much she wanted something hand-knitted with Icelandic wool, so when she tried on this hat at what seemed to be a trustworthy place with, authenticity certificates and whatnot, I got it for her as an anniversary gift. Little did I know it would be used against me later when she made me put it on and started calling me Mushroom Boy. Which brings us to the last thing we did in Iceland, the anniversary dinner at Sjávargrillið, or Seafood Grill. This is a more personal thing, but I couldn't have done it without your support, so I don't mind sharing. You can even see me in my best going out clothes. Ain't I handsome? Some of you may have also noticed something else. Since the start of the year, I've lost 45 kilograms, so my nice clothes are simply more recently purchased articles that actually fit me. To start with, they bring you some bread in a rustic bowl alongside precariously placed seasoned butter, with no plate to put anything on, so good luck avoiding crumbs. Maybe this is meant to be a metaphor for the precarious journeys you can take through the mountains. Or maybe we weren't supposed to have plates. I don't know. Then, the coughing starts. Or at least it did for us. The people on the next table wouldn't stop coughing and kept monopolizing the waitress's time, asking inane questions and making bizarre comments. The GF got a marshmallow martini, and I got a Brennivine cocktail called Sweet Black Death. Hers tasted like a citrus s'more, and mine was a blast of sour herbs. As a starter, she got lobster tacos, which she let me take one of, and, good God, I'm sorry, but I think this counts as a declaration of war against Mexico. I don't think any other taco could possibly measure up. The crispness of the batter against the tenderness of the lobster tail, the savory richness of the cheese cut by the drips of lime juice, revealing the sweetness of the meat. Unbelievable. I went with the slow-cooked cod and lobster, which somehow morphed into slow-cooked cod and tiger prawns without an explanation. A bit strange, but I let it go. Which was fine, because mine was mind-blowing too. The cod had the texture of raw fish, while flaking as cooked cod does. The rich, buttery liquid soaking the crumbs and covering the bottom of the dish is hard to remember the exact taste of right now. My mind's tongue wants to say it was cheesy. In any case, my dish was characterized by its extreme richness. Plus it had artichoke, which is an instant cheat code to make me enjoy a dish. The pickled pearl onion worked perfectly as a palate cleanser too, to let you experience the full richness again. Now, remember the coughing lady on the table next to us? She kept going off, hacking away, telling people and the waitress, "It's not COVID, I have asthma." And around this point, she did something strange. She flagged the waiters over and kept saying, "I'm so embarrassed. I'm so embarrassed." The waitress asked why, and she said, "I ate everything on my plate." Weird, yeah? The waitress also thought it was weird, and the lady indicated toward me and my girlfriend saying, "They shared everything." Which we did, just a taste. I have two theories. One, she was trying to Karen us, thinking sharing wasn't allowed for some reason. Theory 2 goes deeper. Her boyfriend or husband ordered a set menu, and she went a la carte. She went for 3 dishes, and he had 4, which put them out of sync, which means for one course, we saw her with nothing while he ate and he didn't share. You see, theory 2 is that she was trying to use us to shame him for not sharing. Post your theory down below. For my girlfriend's main, she went with the catch of the day, which was ling. Neither of us had had it before, and wow, its texture was like lobster tail but softer, like cod but less flaky. Every element of the dish released layer after layer of flavor. Even just the carrots, taking a piece of carrot took you on a journey that only ended in a taste of candied carrot. Those little crispy black circles you can see in particular were like getting your hands on Willy Wonka's everlasting gobstopper on their own. And I had to ask what they were. Turns out, dried date is incredible. For my main, I had lamb fillet and pulled lamb neck with a rhubarb sauce, beetroot and beetroot chips, mashed potato, pea puree, kale, and mushrooms. Iceland is known for its lamb, because it's one of the few animals you can keep well out there, because of their wool products, and because of the flavor. I have never tasted lamb like this before. The pulled neck in particular was the purest lamb taste I have ever experienced, while the fillet stood out for its firm yet tender texture. Worth every penny. And it cost a lot of pennies. For dessert, we each got one last cone at Valdis Ice Cream. And that's it. We went to sleep at about 11:30 and got up at 3 a.m. to catch the bus back to Keflavik Airport. I hope some of this was interesting or fun to hear about, and thank you again. See you next time with a more usual vid.